The Nakajima Ki-43 fighter was given the U.S. military code name Oscar, and by that name most Americans know it. The plane's Japanese nickname was Peregrine Falcon. The plane flew like a falcon. It was one of the most maneuverable of all planes in World War II. It could outclimb and outturn any Allied fighter. Because of that, the Japanese Ki-43 ruled the skies in Asia and the Pacific early in World War II. The legendary Japanese Zero fighter was a Japanese Navy aircraft. The Nakajima Ki-43 was the Japanese Army's unofficial copy of the Zero. The Zero and the Ki-43 were similar aircraft. The Ki-43 entered service in 1941 and became the most widely used Japanese Army fighter of World War II. It shot down more Allied aircraft than any other Japanese fighter. A total of 5,919 Ki-43s were built. In the 1941 to 1942 period, the Ki-43 was one of the best fighters in the Pacific. It could outmaneuver any Allied fighter. It was very difficult to hit. It had two drawbacks, though. It had no armor protection for the pilot and no self-sealing fuel tanks. That meant when the plane was hit, it was more easily destroyed than an Allied fighter would have been from the same damage. In November 1942, the Japanese tried to improve the Ki-43 with the IIB model, which had pilot armor and self-sealing fuel tanks added. These improvements were not enough. By 1943, the American fighter planes introduced into the Pacific theater were in general significantly better than the Ki-43. Another problem was the Ki-43 had only two machine guns. The new American fighters were built to withstand a lot of battle damage. On average, a Japanese pilot would have an American plane in his gun sights for only a few split seconds and could not do enough damage with only two machine guns to knock down the U.S. plane. The result was the American P-38 Lightnings, P-51 Mustangs, F-4U Corsairs, and F-6F Hellcats were able to gain air superiority over the Ki-43 and the Japanese Army Air Force. By 1945, the tide of war had turned so badly against the Japanese that many of the surviving Ki-43s were used as kamikaze planes. These were suicide missions. The pilots crashed their planes into U.S. Navy ships positioned near Japan. The Ki-43 was one of the most commonly used kamikaze planes. Specifications for the Nakajima Ki-43 IIB fighter are: crew, 1 pilot, length, 29 feet, wingspan, 35.5 feet, height, 10.5 feet at the tail top, loaded weight, 5,710 pounds, power plant, a radial engine with 14 cylinders developing 1,150 horsepower, maximum speed, 329 miles per hour, range 1,095 miles, ceiling 36,750 feet, armament 2 50 caliber machine guns located in the upper nose. The machine guns were synchronized to fire through the spinning propellers. Incidentally, these machine guns were copies of the American Browning M2 50 caliber machine gun. It could also carry 2 small bombs under the wings.